hyped up on our cake and tea that we've had. So hopefully this will be a fun, informative but informal session. Got to remember, well, I was on this side last year, you see, so I was all geared up. But there we go. Anyway, this is the Tutored tasting, What's New, and the Retro Revival. David T. Smith, that's me. Summer Fruit Cup, also Craft Distilling Expo. Just very briefly a little bit about me. I write a range of different books and for different magazines and publications, including the Gin Annual and what was, as previously was, Gin Magazine. Number of different things there. I do some of the judgings for the competitions, spirits competitions, and I'm a co-founder of the Craft Distilling Expo, which has moved to May, just so everyone knows, Tuesday 21st and Wednesday the 22nd. Got to get the plug in there. Anyway, what you're really interested in about is the gin, and let's not chat anymore. Let's get on to sample number 1. So this is part of our retro revival. So I'll tell you a little bit about the background of this gin. So this is El Bart's gin. Anyone here heard of El Bart's gin before? Yeah, a few. Anyone know why it's famous? It's very old. Because it is very old, that's true. We've got some adverts here, but the main reason why it's particularly well known is it was the first gin, so it's the gin that's called for by name in the for the aviation cocktail, the first aviation cocktail in Hugo Enslin's recipe for mixed drinks from 1916. There's no adverts for El Bart gin in the book or anything. There's adverts for some other stuff, but not for El Bart gin, which makes me think he genuinely just really, really liked it. And that's why it's kind of interesting. And so for a long time when it wasn't being made, people were like, well, how do we actually make the proper aviation? I'll tell you how you don't make a proper aviation. If you ever have an aviation that is bright purple, totally wrong. Because anyone that's made one knows you can't get it to be that colour. That's more the colour of an aviation, in honesty, on the left-hand side there. My violet is Gold Moon Violet, which is, mine's a little on the paler side because I've had it for a little bit, but still, it should never be this neon purple. Relatively simple recipe. This is just a gin tonic, which is with their suggested served with the frozen berries. So this is a gin that comes, originally has its origins in London, in a distillery called Camberwell Distillery, which was Addington Square, which is kind of just a little bit south of Elephant and Castle, that kind of area. The oldest reference I found to it was actually from a cricket match from 1867, which is the Beaufoys versus the Camberwell Distillery team, and Camberwell won, so good for them. But the distillery did various different things, and in 1898 it was sold to a chap called Willis, who partnered with a gentleman called Skeets, and actually Skeets is an ancestor of him who's bought the gin back. And then the recipe was sold in 1904, and the equipment and all the recipe was shipped over to Baltimore, Maryland in the US, where it was made. And so my theory is the reason why this was such a popular drink here is if you look at the date, 1916, there would not have been, for the First World War, there would not have been a lot of British gin being exported to the US. And so this was pretty much the closest thing that people could get because it was based on the recipe, it was based on the same equipment. And so I think that's why in this book this is used a lot for that reason. They did have, for this period of time, they had this huge marketing campaign. You got these things here, and you have a whole Martini set here for $5 with a shaker and vermouth and glasses and everything, and there's a shaker there. So for this sort of period of time, it was exceptionally popular. And of course you've got things like Prohibition that are going to get in the way as well, but nevertheless, very popular for a long time. And that's El Bart gin. It then subsequently came back a couple of years ago, as I said, I think it was during coronavirus. It was a project of Mr. Skeets, Peter, and he worked on it and found the recipe, and they've brought the brand back, which is great. Very simple recipes you'd expect from a gin from that sort of time. Going back to what Desmond was saying earlier, it's juniper, coriander, angelica, and orris fruit. And so there we are. That's it. That's the gin brought back today, which is quite exciting. For a long time, you couldn't bring it back because I had looked into it, but the trademark was owned by Aviation Gin, and then it lapsed. So good for those that went on with it. Anyway, so. But yeah, a nice sort of snapshot of gin from that kind of period of time. Of course, gin back then, the base alcohol wouldn't be so pure. But any initial thoughts on this one? Ginny? Ginny, good. That's how I like to start. So? Yeah. So simplicity, which is nice. We then move. Oh, here we go. There's a gin note there as well. We then move on to Booth's gin. Now most people probably heard of Booth's gin. Yeah. Oldest, 1740, Felix Booth. So one of the, if not the oldest, at least still producing in some respect, gin company that there is. There's a little range of some different ones from different times. The interesting thing about Booth's, particularly the finest, or as it was sometimes known in the US House of Lords, was it was matured. So this is, you've got on this poster here, quality achieved by maturity. And that's why you've got this slight taint here. This is it's been brought back a couple of times. This is juniper, coriander, angelica, and cassia. It's aged for 30 days in XPX casks. Booth's historically was aged in different things. Some of it was sherry cask. At one point it was Burgundy cask as well, so it did vary a little bit. But this is kind of one of these, what we talk about, sort of yellow gins. This is kind of this idea where it's not really, really heavy, but there's a light element to it there. It was tried to be brought back in this sort of aged version. I think in 2016 there was a little sort of small launch in New Orleans. It was sold to Sazerac in 2018. Here we go. So this is the 2016 sort of revival. And then this is the 2022 revival, and this is the one that you can get at the moment. So let's have a taste of that.
David, the reason why it's yellow is that the distiller, when he was making the gin, by accident put it in a sherry cask. And it came out, and the owner said, that's what
we like it. Well, yeah, exactly. Yes, I mean, and of course this comes at a time when these things first started, which was, things weren't being stored in plastic or in metal. They were being stored in cask, and so you would have some impact. And so, yeah, my understanding is that the stock rotation wasn't quite perfect, and then that was why you get a little bit of leftover, and then people go, actually, we quite like the taste of that. My guess is probably it would have what the barrel was. I reckon probably just changed over time. It would have been what was available. I think would have been a huge part of that. So this is done with that in mind. I think it's done very nicely with that in mind. But obviously they do more specifically talk about the sherry cask. The old ones, like the finest and the House of Lords, they didn't really talk about it. They just talk about maturity in the same way as Seagram's, which comes from the 20s as well. They talked about that. About maturity or being aged or something. What about this one? People's thoughts? Sorry? Earthy, yeah.
Do you have an idea if it always was that earthy?
This is, I would say it's changed over time because it's also been sold by different people and there's been a number of different things. Even the old samples I've tried, changed over time. So this is kind of, I think that this is a nod to the history, but with very much the modern market in place, which in honesty is what you have to do these days, because otherwise no one will buy it, and then you've kind of wasted your time. So what do people think about the woodiness? Do you get much of the woodiness, or yeah, you get some, yeah. Yeah, I think it's, but not too overpowering. It makes an absolute fantastic gin highball, which I think is lovely, very refreshing drink. So that's our second from the retro revival. And there's our flavour profile on there, as I said, with the sparkling water. Now we move on to Crown Jewel. Oh, yeah, here we go. So 50%, so prepare yourself. Started off in 1993, and then there's been a few variations on the bottle, and when it's been brought back again in 2016. Thank you to the Gin Archive, because they've got at least these two, which I managed to get pictures from them. You can see very slight variation on the bottles there. You can see like the positioning of the Raven is kind of how you tell which one you've got. But now, excitingly, was brought back last year with this very funky bottle. So let's have a taste of this one, number 3. And a toast to Desmond to you, sir. So I remember this was one of the first gins. I think my parents brought me back some from Portugal or something, because it was a big duty-free thing. And it was one of the first sort of slightly more out there gins that I had tried, because it had grapefruit in it. And I was really excited that it was not lemon or orange, it's got grapefruit. And that's the difference with this gin. It's got grapefruit and it's at 50% ABV. So it's not all overcomplicated, it's simplicity. But what a difference it makes. And I think it's absolutely delicious. So it's lovely to be sharing it with you as well. I noticed there was this very bling version that is a part of this competition and an auction that's been going on, which was for the Coronation 2023, this is gold with a ruby in it, so that's a little bit fancy. Thoughts on the flavour of this one?
Oh, it's stunning, absolutely stunning.
Kathy, you going to say something? I mean, I think you can tell that it's 50%, but it's not overwhelming, which I think it's still, it means it still could work very nicely in a martini. So there we go. We move on. To the Hayman's. Here we go. So, Pal, what does that orange light mean? Oh, okay, fine. That's fine. I just didn't know. I was like, is that the 5-minute timer? I was like, really? What? So, I don't want to rush. We've got some good gins here, but I will keep the pace up. So those were our first 3. These kind of like bringing back these gins. Actually, all of them relatively straightforward. There's a beauty in their simplicity, which I think is maybe that's the message of the day. We've got Hayman's Singapore Airlines Connoisseur's Dry Gin, created to celebrate 50 years of flights from London to Singapore. Always enjoy the gins from Hayman's, so I was pleased that there was a new one that I can include to today's tasting. Sorry? It's available. You can get it.
It's only available in business class or first class.
But on your website as well. And on your website. I think you can buy it on the website. Yeah. Okay. So we've got. So the idea with this is you've got the classic kind of structure of a London dry gin, but then inspired by a sense of place with Singapore. So it also quite fits nicely to the previous talk that we had as well. So we've got kumquat, lemongrass, glangal, and Persian lime in here. So it's going to be a little bit more citrus, a little bit more aromatic. 41.2. Here we go. We've got the flavours here. I mean, so much citrus, right? Beautiful. But what I like is that it's this combination of the citrus fruit and then the lemongrass. So then you get citrus and spice, and I really, anyone that's looking at doing new versions of things, I love this idea of rather than just going, let's do citrus, it's like, let's do citrus, but what else that's not citrus can we maybe add to it? So maybe something leafy like a lemon thyme, or spicy like a lemongrass. We know we had, talking about the gin that had lemon verbena in it as well. So I think having that broader view is lovely. Very sippable, I think. Tiny little bit of sweetness, but just lovely. Any thoughts on this one? How would you drink it, anyone? Someone from over here. I like someone said here, I'd like to drink it on business class or first class. Well, there you go. I think it'd be a great gin. Yeah, fantastic gin team. Great, yeah, I could say, well, and that would fit very nicely. I think I think I'd enjoy it very much because it's a little bit more sort of summery, and I am quite a fan of the Martini on the rocks. I think it would work really nicely because I think there's like a little bit of, so a bit like drinking the gin on the rocks, but with a little bit of a mousse in it. But I think that could work nicely. So there's our more classic style. That's our classic first half. Now we get into some more cookie stuff, okay? All good, but there we go. So here we have Greater Than's Broken Back Gin. So an aged gin. Thank you for letting me, I know you wanted to have it in your talk, so thank you for letting me have it in mine. It's 43%. It's your sample number 5. Botanicals are included here: juniper, coriander, fennel, chamomile, ginger, and lemongrass. But the real interesting thing is it's aged with toasted cashmere willow. Anyone get the, you get the connection with the willow? There you go. It's our second cricket reference today. There we go. So let's have a taste of it. I don't know anyone that's done anything aging with willow at all. I mean, we've seen a few different things with some different types of wood, and I just think it's fantastic to be experimenting with different things like this. And Anna, can you explain a little bit, briefly, a little bit more about... Brilliant. Just in case anyone didn't catch that, it's sort of shaved willow chips, partly from broken bats, hence the name, old cricket bat, and also sort of offcuts from a bat manufacturer, which is great. I mean, the thing I find fascinating is the balance of the... to be fair, I don't actually know what the wood chips, the flavour it would do. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm getting some of those botanicals coming through, so I quite like the balance of the botanicals and the wood on that one. Any thoughts on this one over here?
I'm sure it's also a suggestion, but the second to leather.
Leather. I can see that. Yeah, I can see why you think that. So, right, if people don't, I'm going to start picking on people though in a minute. If people don't start putting forward their views, so be wary. Because you're all very quiet. Everyone's very quiet today. Very well behaved. So there's our views there. Now we move on to, this is a two-parter. So we've got, very exciting, so we've got the Warner's Four Pillars Harrington Shiraz Gin, and then we've also got the Four Pillars Green Apple and Rhubarb. So these are a collaboration between Four Pillars and Warner's, two fantastic distilleries. Four Pillars done a lot of collaborations with a lot of different distillers over the years, but I think this is quite a fun one where you kind of have this mirror of the two ideas here. So Four Pillars very well known for their Bloody Shiraz gin, and this has kind of taken that, but almost sort of given it the London dry treatment, I guess you might say. It's 40%, classic stuff that you would expect: juniper and coriander. It's got orange, there's lemon balm, there's some cloves and cardamom. There we go. Shiraz grapes, but then also some Australian botanicals like wattle seed and strawberry gum. So let's have a little taste of this one. So there is some fruitiness, but it's a much, much drier way than you get when you have something like the typical Bloody Shiraz. Anyone at the back there? Any thoughts? Carl? Yeah, the Bloody Shiraz is almost like a soda, isn't it? It's very jammy and that. Whereas this, I think you would use this more like you would just use a normal dry gin, Martini, or... Yeah, something like a French 75, I think, would be quite interesting because you've got that sort of combination of grapes there. Anyone over here with any thoughts on this one? Sorry? Not that I know of, but I can see how wattle seed might come across in that sort of slightly sweet, slightly nutty kind of thing. I can see where that might come from. Very, very smooth, very clean distilled. A wine glass of it, perhaps. Okay, so that's the first part, and then we move to the second one. Oh, there's the flavour what we talked about there. Yes, I can see it in the Martini and the gin spritz. this is the second one. So this is 4 pillars, but with apple and rhubarb. So one of the processes that Warner's use for some of their fruit gins is this idea of, rather than just proofing down with water, they proof down with the fruit juice as well. So it's what Tom calls the Harrington method, but I mean, I don't know if it's really caught on yet, but that's what he told me it was called. So this is a gin, and then that's been proofed down with, it's got apple juice and rhubarb juice, and then a bit of apple eau de vie is in there as well. This is 41.8, and it's sample number 7. So this is going to be, you know, we're moving from the dry to the sweeter and the fruitier sort of flavours. Although actually, to me, it wasn't as sweet as I thought it was, which was quite pleasant. So, yeah, there's a nice, well, yes, with the rhubarb and the apple, I think that's good. Any thoughts on this, how you drink it? SJ at the back? See that? Yeah. Any other thoughts on this one? Yeah. Yeah, I think it's, I mean, it's looking at this, and we've seen it, and I've spoken about it before, it's like sort of looking at the post-distillation thing, and I guess the whole thing about the salt is all about like what can be done post-distillation, whereas often we focus so much on the pre-distillation, which is obviously exceptionally important, but there are other things as well. And then we'll finish off with a little sweet treat, which is, oh, there's the, sorry, rhubarb crumble sour. I don't know what the recipe for that is, but it sounds quite nice. Fruit cup, I can totally see, put a bit of red vermouth in here, lemonade, you'd be rocking and rolling. Here we go, the Herno Slow Gin. So this is, it's the classic Herno gin, which is infused with sloe berries for 4 months. And then that gin is then is put in a barrel like this. This is a juniper wood barrel. It's an Ankar, which is about 40 litres, I think. Ankar is like a Swedish measurement. And that's rested for another 4 months. So Herno make a juniper cask gin, so they put their gin in a juniper cask and then they age it. And then this, I think, is what's been done with the cask after it's had the gin in it. So it will have had a few goes in there. This makes me too. Sorry? What's a juniper cask? It's a cask made out of juniper wood. Depends on the variety of juniper you have. Which I'm sworn to secrecy because they are notoriously leaky. I mean, that is true. I mean, they are. They are. Let's have a little taste of this one. So, I mean, it's interesting because I think their gin's very good, and then their slow gin's very good. And they're like, yeah, but we still want to do more. So this is what we're getting. I think the influence that you get is that slightly piney, slightly cedary, almost slightly pencil shavings at the very, very ending, in the nicest possible way, of course. But and I think that's that's the impact I would guess from having tasted it. Actually tasting like neutral spirit from the juniper cask, it's horrible. It doesn't taste very nice at all. But with a gin, with the botanicals to balance out, it's much better. Thoughts on the slow? Delicious, we all like it over there. Something a bit different. I mean, we've seen a few barrel-aged slow gins, and of course, slow gin is kind of this weird thing because it's a liqueur, not a gin, and there's all this kind of stuff. But it is nice to see like there's a way that almost brings it a bit more back to juniper. So there we go. So quick vote on the favourites, because I always like to know who the favourites are. Who liked number 1 the most? Number 1 was Elbart's. Okay, number 2 was Booth's. Who liked that one best? Okay, and number 3 was the Beefeater. Crown Jewel. Who liked that best? Oh, there you go. Good to see, good to see. Number 4 was the Haymans. Oh, that's right. You can vote. You can vote more than once. The Broken Bat. Number 5. That's number 5. Yeah, Broken Bat. Some big fans of number 5. That's great. And then the first one, which was it was the Shiraz, wasn't it? That was number 6. Favourites? Yeah, few. Oh, very good. Number 7 was the apple rhubarb. What's that sweet one? We got the traditionalists in today. There you go. And number 8, the slow stone. Well, Keli loved it. There you go. And there's a couple of others. Traditionalists that have got a sweet tooth. Well, why not? Why not, indeed? Right, I think that's me. Any questions from anyone? Anne?
It might not be a question for you. It might actually be directed at Mr. Heyman. Just when I was learning about flavour and people's perception of flavour, I learned that when you're in the air, in an aircraft, your flavour perception and the way you appreciate food is different. So was part of the R&D process flying first class in Singapore Airlines?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a great point that Anne makes, and yeah, it's very quickly. It's 3 main things that change. It's the pressure will change it. The noise makes a big difference. If you have noise cancelling headphones and you switch them on and switch them off, makes a difference when you're on a plane. And the humidity, pressure, humidity, noise. Yeah, three things. So. Yeah, I'm actually writing an article on how you can improve your cocktail experience in air for Travellux magazine. So there we go, when that comes out. So maybe a future talk as well. Anyway, well, thank you very much. I don't know how many years. You keep asking me back, so thank you. I hope you've enjoyed it. The one thing I always try and do is, was there at least one gin here that you've never tried before? Yes. Everyone tried it. Good. That's my goal. Thank you very much.